Have you ever noticed how some people seem to attract disrespect wherever they go, while others rarely experience it? The difference is not always physical strength, social status, or even intelligence. More often than not, it comes down to one invisible habit, what they choose to tolerate. Every relationship, whether personal or professional, is built on patterns. The moment you repeatedly allow someone to cross your boundaries without consequence, you silently teach them that your dignity is negotiable. People don't always start with open disrespect. It usually begins with small tests, a sarcastic comment, disguised as a joke, an ignored message, a broken promise, someone interrupting you constantly, or speaking to you with just enough disrespect to see if you'll accept it. Those tiny moments are where respect is either earned or lost. Many people stay silent because they believe avoiding conflict makes them mature. They tell themselves, it's not worth arguing, or maybe I'm overreacting. While choosing peace is often wise, repeatedly sacrificing your self-respect for temporary comfort creates a dangerous pattern. The problem isn't that people made one mistake. The problem is when they realize there is no cost for repeating it. Human behavior follows reinforcement. Whatever is rewarded tends to continue. If someone disrespects you and nothing changes, they unconsciously assume that behavior is acceptable. Think about it for a moment. Imagine someone constantly arrives late whenever they meet you. At first, you excuse it. Then they cancel plans at the last minute. Again, you forgive them without saying anything. Soon they begin treating your time as if it has no value. Did they suddenly become disrespectful? Not necessarily. They simply learned that your boundaries could be ignored without consequences. This is why silence, when repeated too often, doesn't protect respect. It slowly erodes it. The strongest people understand something that many never learn. Boundaries are not punishments. They are instructions. They tell the world how you expect to be treated. Healthy people respect clear boundaries because they understand mutual respect. Unhealthy people may become uncomfortable because they no longer have unlimited access to your patience. That discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is protecting your dignity. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing they must explain, justify, or defend every boundary they set. They think they need a perfect speech before saying no. But confidence doesn't require lengthy explanations. Sometimes the most powerful response is calm, simple, and direct. I don't appreciate being spoken to like that. That doesn't work for me. If this continues, I'll leave. Short, respectful, certain, those few words often carry more authority than a 10-minute emotional argument. Notice something important here. People who command respect rarely become loud first. They don't chase approval, beg to be understood, or desperately convince others to value them. They understand that respect is demonstrated through consistent action, not endless discussion. When words and actions match, people pay attention. There is another hidden trap that keeps many people stuck. They confuse kindness with endless tolerance. Kindness is a beautiful quality, but kindness without boundaries often becomes permission for others to take advantage of you. Being compassionate does not mean accepting repeated disrespect. Forgiveness does not require continued access to your life. You can wish someone well while refusing to let them mistreat you again. Remember, every time you protect your peace, you send a message, not only to others, but also to yourself. You reinforce the belief that your feelings matter, your time matters, and your dignity matters. That inner message slowly transforms the way you carry yourself. Your posture changes. Your voice becomes steadier. Your decisions become clearer. People begin responding differently because they sense that you respect yourself first. Ironically, the people who fear losing respect the most often lose it because they are afraid to defend themselves. They stay silent to keep everyone happy, but end up exhausted, resentful, and overlooked. The people who are genuinely respected understand that not everyone will like them, and they're willing to accept that. They choose temporary discomfort over permanent disrespect. So if there's one lesson to remember, let it be this. Every moment of tolerated disrespect becomes tomorrow's expectation. The standard you accept today becomes the treatment you receive tomorrow. When you calmly refuse to reward disrespect with silence, you begin changing every relationship in your life. And once people realize that your self-respect is not negotiable, they become far more careful about how they treat you. Because the truth is simple. The world often follows the standards you consistently enforce, not the standards you quietly wish people would respect. Once you stop rewarding disrespect with silence, something even more important begins to happen. You start changing the way you see yourself. And when your view of yourself changes, the way other people see you changes too. This is where quiet confidence becomes your greatest advantage. Most people think confidence means speaking the loudest, dominating every conversation, or proving everyone wrong. But real confidence is much quieter than that. It doesn't demand attention because it doesn't need validation. It creates an invisible presence that makes people think twice before crossing your paths. Right? Have you ever walked into a room and immediately noticed someone without them saying a single word? They weren't showing off. They weren't trying to impress anyone, yet people naturally respected them. That kind of presence isn't built overnight. It comes from years of keeping promises to yourself, standing by your values, and refusing to let your emotions control your decisions. Confidence isn't something you wear. It's something you repeatedly earn through your own actions. The opposite is also true. When someone constantly apologizes for existing, second guesses every decision, or changes their personality just to be accepted, people unconsciously sense uncertainty. While kind people won't take advantage of it, manipulative people often will. They notice hesitation. They notice insecurity. They notice when someone is desperate for approval. And unfortunately, desperation often invites disrespect. One of the biggest misunderstandings about confidence is believing it comes after success. People think, once I become successful, then I'll be confident. But confidence actually grows through small acts of courage repeated every day. It grows every time you speak honestly, even when your voice shakes. It grows every time you keep your word. It grows every time you choose discipline instead of excuses. These small victories slowly reshape your identity until confidence becomes part of who you do. Notice that truly confident people don't rush to defend themselves against every criticism. They understand that not every opinion deserves a response. Someone who knows their worth doesn't feel the need to win every argument or correct every misunderstanding. They let their character speak louder than temporary opinions. This emotional stability creates an aura that naturally discourages disrespect. There's a powerful psychological reason behind this. People constantly evaluate how others react under pressure. If every insult immediately triggers anger, every disagreement becomes an emotional explosion, or every criticism leads to panic, others realize they can easily control your emotional state. But when you remain calm, thoughtful, and composed, even during uncomfortable moments, you become much harder to manipulate. Your calmness communicates strength without saying a word. Think about a mountain during a storm. The wind screams. The rain crashes against it. Thunder shakes the sky. Yet the mountain doesn't move. It doesn't argue with the storm. It simply remains where it is. Quiet confidence works the same way. You don't need to react to every opinion, every insult, or every attempt to provoke you. Sometimes your greatest power is your refusal to be emotionally pulled into someone else's chaos. Another habit that strengthens quiet confidence is becoming comfortable with silence. Many people rush to fill every pause because silence makes them nervous. They over-explain, overshare, and over-justify themselves. Confident people understand that silence is not weakness. Silence often communicates certainty. When you pause before responding, maintain steady eye contact, and choose your words carefully, people naturally pay closer attention. They begin to realize that your words have weight because you don't waste them. This doesn't mean becoming cold, arrogant, or emotionally distant. Arrogance tries to convince people of superiority. Confidence has nothing to prove. Arrogant people constantly seek admiration because deep down they fear being ordinary. Confident people are secure enough to celebrate others without feeling threatened. They don't compete with everyone because their greatest competition is becoming a better version of themselves. Quiet confidence also grows when your life is guided by values instead of opinions. If your mood rises and falls based on what everyone thinks of you, you'll constantly feel anxious. But when your decisions are based on principles, honesty, discipline, integrity, and self-respect, you become emotionally grounded. People may not always agree with you, but they will recognize consistency. And consistency builds trust. Trust builds credibility. Credibility builds respect. Remember, confidence is visible long before you speak. It's reflected in the way you walk into a room without seeking approval. It's heard in the calmness of your voice when you disagree respectfully. It's seen in your willingness to say no without guilt. It's revealed by your ability to stay composed when others are trying to provoke you. That quiet strength sends a powerful message. I know who I am, and I don't need your permission to believe it. When people realize they cannot intimidate you, pressure you, or shake your sense of self, something remarkable happens. They begin treating you differently, not because you demanded respect, but because your quiet confidence has made disrespect feel like a losing strategy. And once you've built that kind of inner strength, you'll be ready for the next essential step, learning how to enforce clear boundaries without anger, resentment, or unnecessary conflict. Once you've built quiet confidence, the next challenge is proving that your confidence is real, because confidence without boundaries is only an appearance. Sooner or later, someone will test it. They may ignore your limits, dismiss your feelings, or push you further than you're comfortable with. In that moment, your response determines whether people continue respecting you or begin treating your confidence as empty words. This is why boundaries matter so much. They are not walls designed to keep everyone out. They are gates that teach people how to enter your life respectfully. Many people struggle with boundaries because they associate them with conflict. They worry that saying no will make them seem selfish, rude, or unkind. So instead, they say yes when they mean no. They tolerate behavior that hurts them. They stay in conversations they no longer want to have. They sacrifice their own peace to avoid disappointing someone else. At first, this feels easier, but over time, that small discomfort grows into resentment, frustration, and emotional exhaustion. The irony is that people who never set boundaries often become the angriest people in the room. Not because they're naturally angry, but because they've spent months or even years ignoring their own needs. Every unspoken no eventually turns into hidden resentment. Every ignored boundary becomes emotional weight they continue carrying. Eventually, even a small inconvenience feels overwhelming because the pressure has been building for so long. Healthy boundaries prevent that emotional explosion. They allow you to solve problems while they're still small. Instead of waiting until you're furious, you calmly address the issue early. This approach protects both your relationships and your peace of mind. One of the strongest forms of confidence is the ability to say no without guilt. Notice that this doesn't require hostility. You don't need to insult anyone, raise your voice, or become defensive. A simple, respectful no is often enough. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. I'm choosing something different. The more comfortable you become saying these words, the less control other people have over your decisions. Manipulative people often dislike boundaries because boundaries remove opportunities for ease. They may call you selfish, accuse you of changing, or try to make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. But remember something important. A healthy person respects your boundaries, even if they don't always like them. Someone who becomes angry simply because you said no may have been benefiting from the fact that you rarely did. Another mistake people make is believing every boundary must be explained in great detail. They spend 20 minutes defending a decision that only required one sentence. The more insecure we feel, the more we tend to over-explain. But confident people understand that respect does not require endless justification. They remain polite, but they don't negotiate away their values simply because someone feels uncomfortable. Think of boundaries like the fence around a beautiful garden. The fence isn't there because the flowers hate visitors. It's there to protect what is valuable. Without it, anyone could walk through, damage the plants, or take what doesn't belong to them. Your time, energy, emotions, and peace deserve that same level of protection. If you don't protect them, someone else will eventually misuse them, sometimes intentionally, sometimes simply because they never knew where your limits were. One of the greatest signs of maturity is learning the difference between controlling others and controlling your own actions. You cannot force someone to respect you. You cannot control whether they lie, criticize, or disappoint you. What you can control is your response. You can decide what behavior you will accept. You can decide whether someone continues having access to your life. That's where real power lives, not in controlling people, but in controlling your choices. Sometimes the most powerful boundary isn't something you say, it's something you do. You leave the conversation instead of arguing. You stop replying to repeated disrespect. You spend less time with people who constantly drain your energy. You quietly distance yourself from those who repeatedly violate your trust. Actions communicate seriousness far more effectively than endless warnings. This is especially important because repeated threats without action weaken your credibility. If you continually say, "This is the last time," but never follow through, people eventually stop believing you. Your words lose weight. Respect grows when your actions consistently match your standards. Even small, consistent actions are more powerful than dramatic speeches with no follow-through. It's also important to remember that boundaries aren't only for difficult people. Even healthy relationships benefit from clear expectations. Friends, family members, and coworkers aren't mind readers. Sometimes people unintentionally cross a line because they genuinely don't know where it is. Calm communication prevents misunderstandings before they become lasting problems. As you begin protecting your boundaries, you may notice something surprising. Some people will drift away. At first, this can feel painful, but often, those who disappear were only comfortable with the version of you that never challenged them. The people worth keeping will adjust. They will appreciate your honesty because healthy relationships become stronger through mutual respect, not unlimited tolerance. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is this: boundaries are not about making people fear your anger. They are about making people understand that your self-respect is not negotiable. When your limits are enforced calmly, consistently, and without unnecessary drama, people quickly realize that disrespect always carries consequences. That quiet certainty becomes far more powerful than shouting ever could. Once you've mastered that, you're ready for an even greater level of strength, the ability to remain emotionally composed even when others are trying to provoke you, manipulate you, or pull you into their emotional storms. Once your boundaries become clear, people will naturally begin testing something even deeper: your emotional control. This is where many people lose all the respect they've worked so hard to build. They know what to say. They know when to say no. But the moment someone insults them, criticizes them, or tries to provoke them, they explode. Their emotions take over, and suddenly the other person is controlling the entire situation. That's why one of the greatest forms of strength is learning to become emotionally steady instead of emotionally reactive. Think about it this way. Every time someone can predict exactly how you'll react, they gain influence over you. If they know a certain comment will make you angry, they'll use it. If they know ignoring your message will make you panic, they'll repeat it. If they know criticism will make you desperately seek their approval, they'll keep withholding it. Your predictable reactions become tools in someone else's hands. But when your emotions are guided by wisdom instead of impulse, that control disappears. This doesn't mean becoming cold, distant, or pretending you don't have feelings. Emotional strength isn't about feeling less. It's about choosing your response instead of allowing your emotions to choose it for you. There is a huge difference between feeling anger and being controlled by anger. There is a huge difference between feeling hurt and allowing that hurt to dictate every decision you make. Many manipulative people depend on emotional reactions. They provoke because they want attention. They insult because they want to fight. They criticize because they want to see insecurity. Every emotional outburst gives them exactly what they were hoping for. But when they realize their words no longer control your mood, they lose one of their most powerful weapons. Imagine throwing a rock into a calm lake. The water ripples for a moment, then becomes still again. Now imagine throwing that same rock into a volcano. The explosion is immediate. Which one appears stronger? Most people assume the loudest reaction shows strength. In reality, the greatest strength often belongs to the person who remains composed under pressure. This is why emotionally mature people pause before responding. That pause may only last a few seconds, but it changes everything. Instead of reacting automatically, they ask themselves, what response serves me best? Sometimes that response is speaking calmly. Sometimes it's asking a question. Sometimes it's walking away. And sometimes it's choosing complete silence. Because not every situation deserves your energy. One of the hardest lessons in life is accepting that not every insult requires a defense. People who truly know their worth don't spend every day trying to convince strangers of it. They understand that some opinions reveal more about the speaker than the person being criticized. When someone constantly insults others, manipulates them, or enjoys creating conflict, they're exposing their own character. You don't have to join them in that behavior. Another powerful habit is learning to separate facts from emotions. Suppose someone says, "You'll never succeed." Your emotions may immediately feel hurt, embarrassed, or angry. But pause for a moment. Is that statement a proven fact? Or is it simply someone's opinion? Most of the time, emotional pain becomes much stronger because we mistake opinions for reality. Confident people examine criticism before accepting it. If it's useful, they learn from it. If it's unfair, they let it pass without carrying it for days. This emotional discipline also protects your relationships. Think about how many friendships, families, and partnerships have been damaged because someone reacted in the heat of the moment. A few seconds of uncontrolled anger can create years of regret. Words spoken during emotional storms often leave scars long after the argument has ended. Self-control gives you the opportunity to respond in a way your future self will be proud of. It's also important to understand that calmness should never be confused with weakness. Some people believe staying composed means allowing others to mistreat you. Not at all. You can firmly defend yourself while remaining completely calm. In fact, calm firmness is often much more intimidating than uncontrolled anger. A person who raises their voice is sometimes trying to borrow strength from volume. A person who speaks calmly already possesses that strength internally. You'll also notice something fascinating. The calmer you become, the more clearly you think. When emotions stop flooding your mind, your judgment improves. You notice manipulation sooner. You recognize unhealthy patterns faster. You make better decisions because you're no longer acting out of fear, guilt, or pride. Emotional stability sharpens your awareness. There will always be people who try to pull you into unnecessary drama because drama gives them energy. They want arguments. They want emotional chaos. They want proof that they can still affect your peace. But every time you refuse to participate, you're sending a powerful message. My peace is not available for manipulation. That message earns far more respect than any clever comeback ever could. Remember, the goal isn't to become emotionally unpredictable in a way that confuses or frightens people. The real goal is to become emotionally unshakable. Let others wonder why their insults no longer affect you. Let them question why their silence no longer makes you chase them. Let them realize that your emotions are guided by your values rather than their behavior. When people understand they cannot manipulate your reactions, they begin approaching you differently. They recognize that intimidation, guilt, and emotional games simply don't work anymore. And that kind of inner stability creates something every truly respected person possesses. A quiet sense of power that cannot be taken away by someone else's opinion. Because once you've mastered your emotions, you're finally ready for the next level of respect, becoming so valuable in character, skill, and purpose that people naturally understand there is a real cost to taking you for granted. Once you've learned to control your emotions instead of letting your emotions control you, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop chasing respect, and instead you start becoming someone whose presence naturally commands it. Why? Because people value what is valuable. This doesn't mean becoming rich, famous, or admired by everyone. It means becoming a person whose character, abilities, and self-reliance make your presence meaningful. The more value you bring into your own life and the lives of others, the more carefully people think before taking you for granted. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing respect can be demanded. It can't. You can demand obedience through fear. You can demand attention through noise. But genuine respect is earned through consistent value. People naturally protect relationships that improve their lives. They don't fear losing someone because that person begged to stay. They fear losing someone because that person genuinely made life better. Ask yourself this simple question. If you disappeared from certain relationships tomorrow, what would people truly miss? Would they miss your kindness, your wisdom, your reliability, your honesty, your ability to solve problems? Or would they simply replace you because you brought nothing unique? This isn't meant to make you feel insecure. It's meant to inspire growth. Every person has the ability to become more valuable by developing qualities that cannot easily be replaced. Value begins with the relationship you have with yourself. Invest in your physical health, because energy changes the way you show up in the world. Invest in your knowledge, because informed people make better decisions. Develop communication skills, because ideas have little impact if they can't be expressed clearly. Build emotional maturity, because people trust those who remain steady during difficult moments. Every hour spent improving yourself becomes an investment that pays dividends for years. Notice how people who constantly seek approval often neglect personal growth. They're so busy trying to impress others that they forget to improve themselves. But truly respected individuals reverse that process. They spend less time asking, "Do people like me?" and more time asking, "Am I becoming someone worth respecting?" That shift changes everything. Another important part of becoming valuable is developing independence. This doesn't mean refusing help or isolating yourself from others. It means creating a life where your happiness doesn't depend entirely on someone else's backs. Emotionally independent people don't cling to unhealthy relationships because they know they can stand on their own if necessary. Financial responsibility, useful skills, healthy habits, and emotional resilience all contribute to that independence. And independence naturally earns respect because it removes desperation. Think about a tree with deep roots. During calm weather, every tree looks strong. But when storms arrive, only the deeply rooted trees remain standing. Your skills, discipline, integrity, and purpose become those roots. They give you stability that no external opinion can easily shake. When people see that your confidence comes from substance rather than appearance, they begin viewing you differently. There's also something powerful about becoming known as someone who keeps their word. In a world where promises are easily broken, reliability has become incredibly valuable. If you say you'll do something, do it. If you commit to a responsibility, honor it. Integrity quietly builds a reputation that speaks long before you enter a room. People may forget impressive speeches, but they rarely forget someone whose actions consistently matched their words. At the same time, remember that becoming valuable isn't about exhausting yourself trying to please everyone. Some people confuse being helpful with having no limits. They give endlessly, hoping others will appreciate them. Unfortunately, constant availability often leads to being taken for granted rather than respected. Your value increases not because you give everything away, but because you wisely choose where to invest your time, energy, and attention. Purpose also plays an important role. People who have meaningful goals are much harder to manipulate because their lives revolve around something greater than pleasing others. They don't abandon their dreams just to avoid disappointing someone. They understand that every unnecessary distraction pulls them further away from the future they're trying to build. Purpose creates direction, and direction creates confidence. It's equally important to surround yourself with people who appreciate growth instead of resisting it. Not everyone will celebrate your progress. Some people become uncomfortable when you become healthier, more disciplined, or more confident because your growth reminds them of the changes they're avoiding. Don't let that discourage you. The right people won't fear your success. They'll be inspired by it. As your value grows, you'll notice something interesting. You no longer feel the need to convince people to stay. You stop chasing those who repeatedly disrespect you. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into places where you're not appreciated. Instead, you calmly recognize your worth and allow people to choose whether they want to treat you with respect. If they don't, you know you'll be fine without them. This doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from self-respect. Arrogance says, I'm better than everyone else. Self-respect says, I know what I bring to the table, and I won't allow it to be treated carelessly. That difference is enormous. When your character becomes stronger, your skills become sharper, your purpose becomes clearer, and your independence becomes deeper. People begin understanding something without you ever having to say it. Losing your trust, your friendship, your loyalty, or your presence would be a real loss. Not because you're perfect, but because you've become someone who consistently adds value wherever you go. And when you reach that point, there is only one final lesson left to master: the foundation beneath everything we go. Not because you're perfect, because boundaries, confidence, emotional control, and personal value all become truly powerful only when they are built upon one unshakable principle: genuine self-respect. Everything we've talked about so far leads to one final truth. You can learn to set boundaries. You can develop quiet confidence. You can master your emotions. You can become incredibly valuable. But if those qualities are not built on genuine self-respect, they eventually become fragile. The foundation of every respected person is not how others see them, it's how they see themselves. Because the relationship you have with yourself quietly teaches the world exactly how to treat you. Think about it for a moment. If you constantly criticize yourself, ignore your own needs, break promises to yourself, and accept treatment that you know is beneath your standards, you're sending a message, not only to yourself, but to everyone around you. Without saying a word, you're communicating that your time, your feelings, and your dignity are negotiable. People may not consciously realize it, but they often respond to the standards you consistently live by. This is why self-respect is so much more than confidence. Confidence says, I believe I can. Self-respect says, I know what I deserve. Confidence helps you achieve goals. Self-respect determines what you will and will not tolerate along the way. Together, they create a life that is guided by principles instead of fear. One of the greatest signs of self-respect is keeping the promises you make to yourself. It's easy to make commitments when you're motivated. It's much harder to honor them when no one is watching. Every time you tell yourself you'll exercise tomorrow, start reading next week, stop accepting unhealthy treatment, or pursue your purpose, and then ignore those commitments, your trust in yourself slowly weakens. Over time, you begin doubting your own word, but every time you follow through, even on something small, you strengthen the belief that you can rely on yourself. That inner trust becomes one of the most powerful forms of confidence you'll ever possess. Self-respect also means protecting your time. Time is the one resource that can never be replaced. Money can be earned again. Opportunities can return. But once an hour of your life is gone, it's gone forever. That's why people who respect themselves become intentional about where their time goes. They stop wasting endless hours trying to convince people to value them. They stop chasing relationships that repeatedly leave them drained. They understand that every yes to something unimportant is often a no to something meaningful. Another important part of self-respect is accepting that not everyone will understand your growth. As you become stronger, calmer, and more disciplined, some people may accuse you of changing. And they're right, you have changed. You're no longer willing to sacrifice your peace just to keep everyone comfortable. You're no longer willing to abandon your values for temporary approval. Growth always changes relationships. Some people will celebrate that change. Others will resist it, because the old version of you was easier to control. Do not mistake loneliness for failure during this season. Sometimes growth feels lonely because you're leaving behind habits, environments, and relationships that no longer fit the person you're becoming. But temporary loneliness is often the price of lasting self-respect. It's far better to stand alone with your dignity than to belong to a crowd that requires you to abandon it. Another lesson worth remembering is that self-respect is demonstrated through consistency, not perfection. You will make mistakes. You will have days when you doubt yourself. You will occasionally say yes when you should have said no. You may even allow someone to cross a boundary before realizing it. That's part of being human. Self-respect doesn't demand perfection. It asks for honesty. Learn from the mistake, correct your course, and continue moving forward. Every day offers another opportunity to strengthen your standards. As you continue this journey, you'll notice something remarkable. You stop measuring your worth by compliments, social media attention, job titles, or other people's opinions. Those things may still feel good, but they no longer define you. Your identity becomes rooted in your values, your integrity, and your character. That inner stability creates a peace that external approval can never provide. People often ask, how do I make others fear disrespecting me? The answer may surprise you. The goal isn't to make people fear you. Fear alone never creates healthy respect. Intimidation can force temporary obedience, but it cannot build lasting admiration. What truly changes people's behavior is when they understand that disrespect always has consequences, not because you seek revenge, but because you respect yourself enough to walk away, protect your peace, and refuse to participate in relationships that diminish your value. When people realize you won't tolerate manipulation, they become more careful. When they realize your boundaries are consistent, they become more respectful. When they realize your emotions cannot easily be controlled, they stop trying to provoke you. When they realize your life has purpose beyond pleasing them, they understand they cannot control your direction. And when they realize your self-respect is stronger than your desire for approval, they recognize something powerful. You cannot be easily shaken. So remember the journey we've taken together. Stop rewarding disrespect with silence. Build quiet confidence that doesn't depend on applause. Protect your boundaries with calm consistency. Master your emotions instead of being ruled by them. Become so valuable that your presence genuinely matters. And above all, respect yourself deeply enough that no amount of pressure can convince you to flee perlation. Because in the end, the people who are respected the most are rarely the loudest, the richest, or the most intimidating. They are the ones who know exactly who they are, refuse to compromise their dignity, and quietly live by standards that never change. And once you reach that point, you'll discover something life-changing. You no longer need people to fear disrespecting you. Your actions, your character, and your unwavering self-respect naturally inspire others to think twice before ever trying.